You ever wonder what you would do if someone tried to steal your dignity right in front of 100 strangers at 35,000 feet? That question stopped being hypothetical for me on a Friday afternoon flight from Vegas to Seattle, when what should have been a routine trip turned into a test of how far a bully could go and how far ordinary people would go to stop her. My younger sister, Maya, had been looking forward to this flight for months. She is 23, walks with bright teal crutches because of a bone condition that left her legs fragile and uneven, and has a heart big enough to light up a room. She had saved from her part-time job at a bookstore to buy herself a window seat, 14A, her first time seeing the clouds from the side of the plane instead of craning her neck from the middle row. To her, that small rectangle of glass was a symbol of independence, a chance to see the world without obstacles. When we boarded, she clutched her boarding pass like it was a ticket to a dream. We were almost to her row when the first crack of trouble showed itself. A sharp voice sliced through the buzz of passengers stowing bags. "That seat belongs to my son, not her." I turned and saw a woman blocking the aisle with a designer tote tucked like armor under her arm, pearls at her neck, hair cut into the kind of bob that says she has never been told no. I would later learn her name was Mrs. Coleman, HOA president of some gated community outside Phoenix, but in that moment she was just an immovable wall between my sister and her joy. Her son, a chubby 14-year-old with downcast eyes, lingered behind her looking like he wished he could disappear. Mrs. Coleman snatched the boarding pass out of Maya's hand and announced for everyone to hear that her son was a growing boy who needed the window, and expecting him to sit in the middle would be cruel. The cabin went so quiet you could hear the clink of a seatbelt 2 rows up. Maya froze, gripping her crutches so tightly her knuckles went white, tears welling up though she tried to blink them back. Against my instincts, I did not explode. Not yet. I work as a landscape designer. I study patterns, and this woman was a pattern I recognized. Power through performance, make herself look like the victim while steamrolling anyone in her way. She shoved her son into the seat that Maya had paid extra for, and my sister collapsed into the middle seat like she was the intruder. My jaw clenched. My pulse raced, but I whispered to her, "Trust me," and slipped her real boarding pass into my pocket before Coleman could realize she had nothing but stolen paper in her hand. The woman preened, chatting loudly with a stranger across the aisle about sacrifices and how disabilities don't entitle anyone to special treatment. Her son shrank deeper into the seat, shame painting his face, but Coleman had missed the eyes watching her. 1 row ahead sat a retired school teacher, phone already recording. Behind us in 15C, a gray-haired man was typing furious notes. I later found out he was a retired civil rights attorney. 2 rows up, a woman in a Marine Corps hoodie stared at Coleman like she was sizing up an enemy target. Justice was gathering, silent but steady. When the flight attendant Barbara came down the aisle checking a discrepancy in the seating chart, Coleman put on sugar in her voice. "Oh, we already worked it out," she said, pointing at me. "This nice gentleman gave my son the window because it was the right thing to do." Barbara asked to see boarding passes. Coleman handed over the slip she had swiped from Maya. Barbara scanned it, looked at her tablet, then back at the seat. "This belongs to Maya Jacobs, not to your son." The mask cracked. Coleman tried to smile, claiming we had reached an agreement. That was my cue. I stood, calm and clear, and said no agreement was made. "I have a recording of her taking my sister's ticket and insulting her disability." I hit play. Her words, "That seat belongs to my son, not that crippled girl," echoed through the cabin. Gasps, whispers, disbelieving shakes of heads. Mrs. Jenkins, the school teacher, held up her phone and said she had video proof. The retired attorney announced loudly that what Coleman had done violated federal disability protections. The Marine added that if Coleman tried to spin this, she would be the first to testify against her. Coleman sputtered, pale now, but the final crack came from her own son, who stood up red-faced and muttered, "I don't want to sit here. She deserves the window." "I'm sorry." Applause began, slow then building, passengers clapping not just for Maya, but for the truth finally breaking through. And in that moment, the balance of power shifted, though the real reckoning was still to come. The cabin clapped as Brent gave up the seat, and Maya, with trembling hands, slid into the window spot that had been hers all along. She pressed her forehead gently to the glass as if to remind herself it was real. not some fragile dream snatched away. Mrs. Coleman sat rigid, lips pursed, trying to shrink into invisibility, but there was no hiding from the wave of judgment rolling through that aircraft. Passengers glared, some whispered sharp words, others shook their heads with disgust. The flight attendant Barbara stayed professional, but her eyes spoke volumes as she noted the incident on her tablet. For the next 2 hours, the air was heavy with unspoken tension. Every rustle of a snack bag or ding of the seatbelt sign layered over the silence that Coleman tried to mask by pretending to read a magazine upside down. Maya whispered to me once, saying she had never thought strangers would defend her like that. I told her they hadn't stood up for her, they had stood up with her, and that made all the difference. When we landed in Seattle, the drama wasn't over. A flight supervisor and 2 airport security officers were waiting at the gate, notified by Barbara's report and the evidence passengers had already volunteered. Coleman tried to march off like nothing had happened, but she was intercepted, questioned, and escorted aside, while Brent trailed behind looking like a kid who just wanted to vanish into the crowd. Several passengers gave their contact information to the supervisor, offering video and written statements. The retired attorney even pulled me aside, handing me his card, saying he could help if Coleman tried to twist the story later. The Marine nodded at Maya, telling her to keep her chin high because she had earned her sky that day. Outside the gate area, Maya leaned on her crutches, staring out the terminal window at the line of planes against the sunset, her reflection bright with something new. Not just pride, but belonging. She whispered that she had thought she would always have to fight alone, but now she knew the world still had people willing to draw the line against cruelty. I reminded her that one voice can be silenced, but when 100 voices rise together, even the loudest bully cannot drown them out. As we headed toward baggage claim, I thought about how small acts, a seat, a video, a word of truth, can topple arrogance built on years of unchecked power. Coleman had come aboard thinking rules and dignity bent to her will. She left exposed, her son embarrassed, her reputation cracked, while Maya finally got the view she had worked for. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it simply arrives in the form of a cabin full of strangers refusing to look away. And so I ask you this, if you were there, 35,000 feet in the air, and saw someone's dignity being stolen, would you stay quiet or would you stand up too?